time to go big or go home with the division manager of primary residential mortgage in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Now, here's the entrepreneur and mortgage extraordinaire himself, James Harper.
What would your mama say?
Go big or go home.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening to this week's podcast of Go Big or Go Home. We're excited to have you here today and listen to what we have to offer, what we have as information to you. We are coming to you from our secret headquarters here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I always like to say, I think it's kind of funny. And we're excited to get things going with our very special guest. I'm James Harper, and my goal is to make a difference in your life today. I want you to sit back, open up your mind for the next 45 minutes or so, and think bigger and more exciting things for yourself. I believe that anything is possible if you drop your excuses off at the door. So without further ado, I want to welcome our guest today, our guest speaker, our guest storyteller. And we're just going to sit back and listen to him answer some questions from me that I've kind of put together. And so I want to welcome Jason Duncan to the show today. Thank you so much for coming, my man.
Glad to be here. I'm glad I found the secret layer.
So Jason owns Energy Lighting Services here in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and started this company from the ground floor, or from what I call cradle to grave. And his company has been listed twice in the Inc. 5000 fastest growing privately held companies in America, and has also been listed in the Entrepreneur 360 as one of the best entrepreneurial companies in America. First of all, congratulations. Well done on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So how do you get your company to a level where you get that kind of recognition right out of the gate?
Well, you've got to put in all the hard work first, because they don't give awards unless you've actually done the work. And then it's a matter of having a really good marketing team that finds out where these awards are and the availability of them. And so Inc. 5000 takes nominations from companies all over the country every year to make this list. And so we made an application, said we don't know if we can make it or not, and they came back and said, hey, this is actually a pretty good story. Tell us more. Then we had to make a deeper dive application, send in a lot of data and information, and then came back and found out that we got named on the list twice.
Well, that is why we're here, because you have a story. And so looking at your bio a little bit, I think it's very interesting that you're on your third career, at least the ones that you've kind of told us about. You may have a few more in there that are have not as much significance. So I have here that you were a minister/pastor for 13 years, also spent 4 years as a teacher before starting your company. And man, I got to ask you the first question, because you sound like a profile of myself, where I've always wanted to try to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. And maybe I'm still figuring that out today. But all of a sudden you switch into Energy Lighting Services. So tell us a little bit about what your company is and how you got the idea to start this from the ground floor.
Well, so when I was teaching school, it was the best thing I'd ever done. I really thoroughly enjoyed being a school teacher. I taught 8th grade American history, and really enjoyed the job. I enjoyed the kids. I enjoyed pretty much everything about it. It was so fulfilling. Intended to stay in that career for the rest of my life. And that was, had other things not happened, I'd still be there. But in 2010, I had a friend of mine came to me and he said.
So let me interrupt you there.
Yeah.
So you said that something just happened that created you or forced you to close the door and another one to open. Very, very key thing there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you said, this is something that I was still passionate about. I still loved. I loved teaching 8th grade history. And somewhere in your path that had to change for whatever reason. We don't necessarily need to get in that unless you want to share. But you had to close that door and another one open.
Yeah, so in 2010, 2011, we were coming out of the Great Recession, and every school district in the state, or in the country, was having to make cuts. And I was the last guy hired in my building, and did not have tenure. And even though I had the highest ratings of test scores in the county in my subject matter, I was a model teacher, loved it, had my license to be an administrator. when it came down to having to make budget cuts, I got tapped.
Got the axe.
Yeah, so my contract did not get renewed for the following year, which was good in the sense that it gave me time to plan. So I found out in April, and I was going to get paid up and through till August. The school's out in May, end of May. So when I got that hard conversation with my principal in April of 2011, I said, okay, what am I going to do? And thought I would go just find another teaching job, but there weren't any to be found. At least I couldn't find one, and I wasn't willing to move across the country because Sumner County is my home. I didn't want to go anywhere. And a year prior to all this, so you're asking how I kind of went to this new company. Well, a year prior to that event, a friend of mine had come to me and said, hey, I've got this idea for a hydrogen generator, and I think we could go into business and we could make this hydrogen generator, and it would be really cool, and we might make some money on this. So I thought, dude, I love teaching school. I'm a history teacher, not a science teacher. I don't know anything about hydrogen. But nevertheless, I decided to go ahead and take the shot, and we started the company officially a year prior to that conversation I had with my principal, and we were working on that hydrogen generator just kind of on the side, and it wasn't even a side hustle. It was like a side stroll. We weren't really doing very much with it. But then fast forward a year later,
you weren't dependent on it.
No, I was not dependent on it. wasn't really making any money, but I had to do something different. When my principal said, "Hey, your contract's not going to be renewed," so I looked at all my options, and what I thought was, I've got a company that's set up under the energy. The name of the company is Future Vision Energy, and I said, I've got this company set up, and I could do something with this in the energy space. Hydrogen ain't going to be it, but what could I sell? What could I sell in the energy space? And LEDs was just kind of an idea that came across my desk. I thought, you know what? I'm a really good salesperson. I could probably make that work. And I gave myself a deadline. I said, if I don't have a contract and have something sold by August the 15th, I'll go get a job at Lowe's or Starbucks or something.
So this was still in 2011.
This is 2011. And so the last paycheck I was going to get from the state was going to be on August the 15th. And I'm telling you, James, on August the 12th, I walked out of a hospital and with a contract that ended up turning out to be about $2.3 million, 3 days before my deadline. So I didn't have to go work at Lowe's or Starbucks.
So you sold a concept.
Mm-hmm.
You sold a theory. Maybe it's not a theory. Maybe it's a product. But you sold a concept and or a product and service 3 days before you were officially jobless and paycheckless.
No money. Yep.
No money. Back was against the wall. I love it. So keep on going.
So I went home and I told my wife, I said, well, we did it. we got it. Now, the interesting thing is that like even though that contract eventually was a little over $2 million, I didn't get all the money right then, right? It took a long time for all that money to come in. When you do big contracts, it doesn't typically come in all at once. So I still had to struggle through, the next 12 months or so were still a struggle to make it work. But, you do all the hustling and grinding at the beginning so you don't have to do it at the end. And so I was doing all that at the beginning, making sure I was selling every day, other projects. I was managing projects, sourcing material. I was flying all over the country to find materials, LED lighting that I could buy and source to put into these projects, working out deals with contractors to install the products. It was a one-man show to do all of that work. Now, I had a business partner, but he wasn't involved in the day-to-day operations at that time. So it was me kind of running everything. And eventually, we got to a place where I could afford to hire somebody. And I hired an assistant, and then I hired a salesperson, then I hired an operations person, and grew the team slowly over the years.
Yeah, so to all the listeners out there, he makes that sound kind of easy. And to some extent, it may have been easy in his mind because he had a vision. He had a vision that kind of propelled him into his motivation or his drive. But I'm sure there were days where, man, you were scratching your head and saying, am I making the right choice? What kept you going? Because in any startup business, it's never easy at the beginning. It's never all butterflies and smelling of flowers and all that kind of stuff. So did you ever feel like there was a point where you questioned yourself? Because there are a lot of listeners out there that question their ideas and their motivation and drive each and every day, but it also kind of limits them from ever taken a step because they're kind of looking in the rear view mirror as to what their repeated pattern is of whatever it might be. So what do you think about that?
Well, in my journey, I didn't really have a lot of second guessing or questioning whether or not this was the thing I should be doing, because it worked so well so early for me that there wasn't really a need to sit back and go, am I doing the right thing? Now, that first 6 months before we landed those contracts, we were selling little. I was selling little projects, but I wasn't selling the big ones. Yeah, there were a lot of questions. Is this the right thing? Is this going to work? And so once we got that big project, it kind of landed that proof of concept you need to say, man, this is actually going to work. People will pay money for this. And
so do you feel like how were you able to make it financially during that time?
So there's where my business partner comes in. So he was able to help us with the finances for the first 9 months or so to make sure that things were covered. And then once we got about, I could go back and look at the books, but I think about 9 months in, that's when everything flipped. When everything flipped over, we started being profitable, and we've been profitable ever since.
And still have a business partner today?
Not today, no.
Okay. So at some point there was a transition period.
Indeed,
and was that known up front, or is that something that evolved over time?
No, that's probably been the worst part of my entrepreneurial journey. And that is still fresh. It's still ongoing. It's still something that was not a pleasant experience. But for me, it was a decision to look at the company and say, okay, we're 8 years old at this point. We can move on into greater things. We can become that $20 million company. We can move into different markets across the country. But at the time, the way the structure was, it was, in my estimation, as the CEO and as the majority owner of the company, that that partnership was going to prohibit us from being able to move in those directions. And so over the next 6 months or so, after I kind of made that discovery, just mentally to know this has got to happen, we had to work through what turned out to be a very difficult separation of two partners that were good friends, and I love him and I loved him, and we were good partners and good friends for a long time.
Yeah, I think there's always in any business. This could be in business. This could be in personal relationships. I think there's always a time and place where you learn. I know in my own business, the people that I started with, I'm thankful for and grateful for, because they got me to a point where I was to a certain level. Mm-hmm. But I also realized that at a certain point I'd outgrown a few of these folks, and it was okay to be able to move forward with different people, because now you have different goals and expectations. And there's a book out there, and I do not remember the author, called Necessary Endings. And I think there's a lot of truth and belief to that. I think we start out going a certain direction, and we realize that, I'm sure you have many times over, that you start needing different staff because you need to be at a different level.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true, and it was, it was painful, but it was necessary, and we're still dealing with the fallout from that. So, one thing that I have learned through this entrepreneurial journey is that I know how to structure partner relationships and operating agreements, and how not to, and what you need to pay attention to, because ultimately those operating agreements and the structures that you set up are going to be the things that you live and die by, and you better be prepared to deal with those consequences. So I've learned the hard way, and we're still working through that, and we're suffering the consequences of how that kind of turned out, but ultimately the company is going to be in a much better and healthier place moving forward.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, we definitely hear a lot about your company here in the city, and I know you do a lot of marketing yourself through LinkedIn and Facebook and social media outlets, and also are involved in some community activities. What are some of those?
Well, one of the things that I was telling somebody this morning we do, because they were kind of trying to drill in what do you do in the community, and to me, part of that feels like you're bragging if you talk about it too much. So she was really asking me, well, what do you do? And I started thinking about, well, what is it that we do? Well, my daughter, she's a senior in high school at Station Camp, and she's involved in the tennis program there. She's involved in chorus, and so we my wife more than me, but both of us really support those efforts. And so we go to all the games and we go to all the chorus presentations, and we try to support the chorus, get them what they need, tennis team what they need. We've got a house church that meets in our home and some other homes here in the county, so we try to pour into some of those families to give them what they need and support one another. In the larger region, we're partner members of City Current, which is a great organization here in Nashville and in Memphis that does a lot of good for the community from a business perspective, introduces business people to business people, but also does a lot of events to get nonprofits the support they need from other business leaders in the community. So we do a lot of nonprofit work. There's one specific nonprofit called Samaritan's Feet that provides shoes to children and people all over the world who need shoes. They've donated 7 million pairs of shoes to people that haven't had shoes, and we do a kind of a shoe giveaway. We just did that a couple of weeks ago. So those are things that we get involved, not only just me and my family, but my company as well.
Well, that's great, and we appreciate everything that you give back to the community as well. So let's take a step backwards. Let's learn a little bit about who Jason Duncan is, and so let's start back. Let's start all the way back. Grew up in Sumner County in the White House area. You said.
Yep.
And one of the things that I always like to refer back to, I know when I was growing up, I was hustling. Man, I was always trying to make a dollar. I would play nickel dime poker with my friends and try to make try to win all their money. Or I was out waxing cars, to mowing lawns, to paper routes. I think when I knew that I had a sales background, now for all the listeners out there, I actually have an engineering degree and went in the automotive industry for several years before I switched horses in the mortgage business. And I get this question asked all the time: how do you end up in mortgage and sales when your degree is in engineering? And really, there's a lot of overlap, to be quite honest with you. But what I realized going through the engineering experience is that I really liked sales, and I was really good at sales. And then I started reflecting back as to all the things I had done as a child, and really it started. The aha moment came for me as I said, well, this is what I should have been doing all along. So one of my biggest accolades that I'm here to share, and everybody will really get a good chuckle out of this, I was the highest sales student that sold cheese and sausage in the 8th grade out of my entire middle school. I was number one. I sold the most cheese and sausage. Yay.
The cheese and sausage
Yeah, I'm going to give
magnate.
myself a clap on that. I sold the most cheese and sausage, and I was bound and determined to get the top prize. And, of course, I could pick from whatever I wanted to pick from. And I chose a Commodore 64 keyboard.
I had
Just a
one of
keyboard.
those.
Just a keyboard. I mean, there was no disk drive, there was no monitor, and I worked my butt off, and I got just the keyboard, which today they're $25 or maybe 10. Back then, they were around $200 or $250. And so, but I realized, and then I won some paper route sales and all that. What do you think it was for you? I mean, I'm not really buying what you presented to us, that my first job was at a cafeteria and I mowed the grass. There's got to be something a little bit more there that maybe, based on what I just kind of told you, might have given you your aha there.
Well, so my first job was at a cafeteria, Morrison's Cafeteria in Rivergate Mall. It doesn't exist anymore. I was bussing tables at 15, and my first entry into the workforce, right? Didn't really know much or do much. I just cleaned off tables. But then I guess it was around 16, I worked at the skate center. I was one of the guys that gave out the skates. I was also a floor guard, and I was a DJ. And that's where I really enjoyed working with the people, like working with the other people, even though they were kids like me. I was 16, so I wasn't much older than them, but I really enjoyed working with the kids. And then somewhere in that same age range, 16, 17, I took my first kind of after school job, like that was in pure sales. So I worked for this. It was a satellite company. They sold the big C-band satellites, the big, huge satellites used to set in yards before cable became so prevalent everywhere. And the way I'd sell it is I would go door to door out in the country where they didn't have cable, and the owner of the company taught me how to look at the telephone poles and know which ones had cable and which ones didn't. There's a specific way you can look at it. And he said, you go in the areas that don't have cable, knock on the door, and you do a survey. You say, hey, I'm doing a survey in the area. I'm wondering if you would be interested in cable if cable programming came out here. And everybody was absolutely. Like 1 out of 10 might say no, but everybody's absolutely. I said, well, would you be interested in a person coming by, a sales consultant come by and talk to you about what that might look like and how you could get cable programming? Sure. Well, would you be available tomorrow at 4 o'clock? Absolutely. Send them by. And then I would show up the next day at 4 o'clock. I was also the consultant. And I would have my brochures, and I would sit in there and show them, here's what you could get for this much money a month. You can get the satellite installed. And that was kind of my first sales job. And then as I grew older, I ended up in college. I waited tables at O'Charlie's. That was really the one that kind of taught me, even though it wasn't pure sales, how to deal with the public and how to you get paid based on how you treat them and how you take care of them. And then from that point on, I got into selling insurance, and I tried to sell cars for a little bit. I was not very good at that. Sold a lot of cell phones, a ton of cell phones for Verizon, or what I wasn't Verizon at the time. I don't know what it was called then. What was it? Cellular, GTE, cellular, or something like that. But I sold cell phones, and but insurance was the thing I kept going back to. So in my young adult career, like in my 20s, while I was still doing ministry, I was doing ministry part-time and selling full-time. I sold insurance, and I was pretty good at it, and I sold quite a bit of it. But the thing about the companies I worked for, I could be the top salesperson and still not earning much money at all.
Yeah,
I had to get out of that. It didn't work for me.
Yeah, that's really what happened with me too. Is I realized that I was in a 9-to-5 job. I was making good money, and I remember my mother told me this a few weeks ago, actually, because I went to an all engineering school, so I co-opted every 3 months. So every 3 months I was working for a company, a manufacturing plant that sponsored me. And I remember going in to work when I was on one of the co-op terms and watching these people that worked there just so ungodly bored with what they were doing. And almost to where their heads completely cocked back and they're sleeping in a chair right in the middle of the entire office space, and they don't care. And I thought, man, that can't be me. That can't be me to where I continue to stay in an engineering function that I'm so bored with what I do each and every day that's going to be my life. And even though I finished on out my college career and went into the automotive industry, I still never forgot how incredibly bored these people looked doing their job. And thus is kind of what's promoted me into doing this show, Go Big or Go Home, is because life's never too late. It's never too late to do a fresh start. I started my new career, I guess, I'm 49 now. I'm not to give away my age on air, but so 12 years ago I was 37 when I totally switched horses and totally wanted to do something completely different. And sounds like that's kind of what happened with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good testament for all the listeners out there that it's never too late. It's never too late to try something different. And if you fall, if you fail, you've learned. One way or another, through your own passion, sometimes until you shut a door, another one will not open. Have you ever had that happen? Well, I guess you kind of did.
Absolutely.
With your teaching career.
Yeah, I never expected my teaching career to end, and much less the way that it ended. I always thought that if I decided I got tired of it, it would be on my terms. I could leave when I wanted to, but in fact, I did not get to make that decision. And it kind of forced me into entrepreneurialism. But so in many respects, I'm an accidental entrepreneur, like many people. Mm-hmm. But man, I truly believe that entrepreneurialism is the best career. I don't think it's the best career. You're in complete control of your destiny. But it is scary as hell. Like there are days, like I always tell people this: if you're an entrepreneur, there's an invisible horizontal line in your life as an entrepreneur, and if you go below that line, you're out of business. Mm-hmm. Right? And you're the only one who knows how close you are to that line at any given time. And it goes up and it goes down, just like the stock market, up and down, up and down, up and down. But there are days you wake up and oh my goodness, I'm at the line. Like I've got the next decision that I make can make me go below that line. What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. And now sissies shut it down. They quit. They give up. They say, well, I'm going to go out on my terms. I'm not going to let it go below the line. But then the people who press on and move forward, they get the rewards of that, because the more risks you take, the more rewards are going to be there. But there's also going to be a lot of skinned knees, bruised elbows. You're going to screw up. Things are going to go badly. But that line, I always think about that line every day. How am I? Where am I? In reference to that line.
No, that's good. That's real good. I think that a lot of people want to use excuses of, I don't want to take that risk. I'm not a gambler. But then they'll sit and complain about their unhappiness. And I'm first one to tell you, I did that in about 5 or 6 of my jobs in a row. I kept wanting more money. I kept wanting them to see my value. And at the end of the day, I realized they weren't going to give me any more for my value. And even if they did, and I switched companies to try to get that perceived value, at the end of the day, I hated what I did. It sucked. So I had to do something to change me and change what made my happiness. And you found your happiness in what you do. And I just think that's awesome. So what is we both are involved in a similar coaching or the same coaching program, and I've given Coach Michael Burt a couple touts on the show already. How's that made a difference in your life? And whether it's Coach Michael Burt or any coach out there or mentor, how do you think that's important? How do you think that's changed your business and your personal life?
I think that a lot of people come to me and they say, well, Jason, if you had to give advice to someone starting a business, what is the 1 or 2 key pieces of advice you'd give them as they start? And my answer today is different, of course, than it was a long time ago, but my answer is this: if you're going to start a business, the first thing you need a bookkeeper. You need somebody to make sure they're watching the numbers, and it can't be your wife or your husband. You probably don't need to be doing it yourself. You need to get a professional bookkeeper or accountant, somebody who knows what they're doing, because you're going to underestimate how much you can screw that up and how much that will affect everything. Like the IRS doesn't screw around, man. If you screw something up, I don't care. They're going to let you say you're sorry because you didn't know. So you got to get it right. Not that I made terrible mistakes that I should be in prison for, but there were mistakes that were made in our bookkeeping processes that came to bite us later. They weren't legal mistakes. They were just mistakes in how the numbers were recorded. Second piece of advice is get a business coach day one. And you're going to tell me, Jason, I'm day one. I can't afford to pay myself, much less a business coach. Here's the thing: you can't afford not to have a business coach, because you cannot know what you don't know unless somebody else is helping you. Well, was a business coach going to know everything that I know? But you know what they're trained and they're skilled to do is to see things in ways that you can't see them. They're going to look at things from a completely different perspective. I didn't have a business coach for a long time, partly due to the fact that I thought that I couldn't afford it, and partly due to my partner at the time didn't think it was a good idea. And he was, in fact, a very good coach for me, and it was nice to have him there. But we needed an outside set of eyeballs. And so we didn't hire our first business coach until, I guess it's about 4 years ago. And man, 4 years ago, the company took off. That's when we started making the Inc. 5000 lists. Having a good business coach is absolutely critical to your success. So, a business coach and a bookkeeper. So, I've had many business coaches since then, Coach Burt being one of them, to help me see things that I can't see, and it's extremely valuable.
And listen, to all the listeners, there are a lot of cost-effective coaches out there, and there are coaching programs or coaches in general that will work with you on a magnitude of scale. So don't ever, just because you think coach, you think expense. It is an expense, but there's also some reasonable ways in which you can get plugged into some different coaching programs so that you can start training your mind to think differently.
Absolutely.
And training your mind to have a different mindset. So what do you think? I'm kind of losing my train of thought because I got 3 or 4 things rumbling around in my head. What do you think that from the coaching program was the single biggest thing you've learned?
That's tough. That I don't know
so far.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
This is a journey. Still.
Yeah, I know. We're still in the middle of it, and I don't know. I think that each of the coaches that I've had. So kind of give you a flavor. I've had just a consultant / coach that looked at business strategy. I've had a coach who was more on sales and driving revenue, and then I've had a life coach. And so those are kind of 3 different coaching kind of methodologies, and all of them are looking at completely different ways. Each of them brought significant value in the way that they perceived the business and how my life was intersecting with that business. So I don't know. I mean, it's a fair question, James, and I'm not trying to dodge it, but I don't know that I could pick out one thing and say this is the thing. I could tell you that, we've worked through some very difficult times with some customers who are very difficult. So my strategy coach was able to help me strategize through that. I've had some difficult personal stuff that I've had to work through. My life coach has been extremely valuable in helping me work through that. And I'm not talking about marriage problems or kid problems. I'm just talking about how my personal life intersects with my business, how to balance those things out. And the life coach has been very, very helpful in doing that. And then Coach Burt, as the sales coach, has been able to, just to give one specific example. Our sales cycle in this business doing LED retrofitting in commercial buildings is a very long sales process. And he sat down with our team and helped us go through and look at that process. And of course, he doesn't know LEDs. He doesn't have a clue about it. Doesn't understand our industry. Doesn't understand anything. But he knows sales and he knows business. So he said, when I laid out, here's all the things that we do. He looked at it and go, well, why are you doing it? Why are you doing that? And of course, now we have to justify why we're doing that. And through that justification process, we realize, well, we don't really have to do that. So we could eliminate that entire step, or we could move this step to this position in the process. And we shortened our sales cycle by about 50%, which is a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
If you can shorten that cycle, you make a lot more money.
So, what do you, what really motivates you today?
Well, my primary motivation is my family. I'm motivated by making sure that I provide for them and take care of them. I've been married for 24 years, almost 25 years, to my high school sweetheart.
Congratulations.
So,
awesome.
She's my best friend, and I do anything for her. And she's number one in my life, like everything. And I told the kids, we were having dinner last night, I said, baby, you're my favorite, right? And I was talking about wife in front of the kids because the kids were joking about who the favorite was. I'm like, well, let me tell you guys, if I got to make a choice, it's her. But then I got great kids. My kids are awesome. I got a 19-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter, and they're why I get up and go work and deal with all the crap that I have to deal with sometimes. So that's my primary motivation, is I want to make sure I take care of them. And then secondarily, I look at my employees, I look at my team members, and I look at the fact that they're able to buy homes and go on vacations and invest and save for retirement because of an idea that I had, crazy idea that I had, that I could sell LED lighting. And so that motivates me. So a lot of that I had a friend of mine. He's actually an entrepreneur as well. I was commiserating with him, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and I was having one of those bad days when I was close to the line.
Yeah.
And I said,
we've been to the line there. We've walked the line.
Yes, I know. And I said, man, I just don't, I was complaining. I don't feel like I'm making a difference. Man, when I was teaching, I was making a difference. And he looked at me and said, look, dude, he said, look at your employees. You're making a difference. It's just different than what you thought it would be.
Yeah.
And that really changed everything for me. I thought, okay, I am making a difference. So now, I pray for my employees by name every single day. I use an app on my phone that reminds me to do that because while we're doing this. And when I make a business decision that puts them in jeopardy, of course it puts me in jeopardy as well, like that's a big deal. Yeah. I don't take that lightly. And I think they get that. I think they understand. And maybe not all of them, but I think most of them get that, my intentions and my motivation is to make sure that they're taken care of.
And how many employees you have now?
I was asked that earlier. I just hired some. I think we're at 13, 14, something like that. And I'm hiring. I've got 2 more people that I'm trying to hire before the end of the year too.
Good, man. Well, that's awesome. So I'm just going to kind of ask you a few more questions here, and then we're going to wrap it up. What's next for you? What's on your horizon that you feel like you're not done with or you're not finished with in your life?
Well, I think that from a career standpoint, I'm on career number 3.
Yes.
So I was in ministry for a long time. Then I was a teacher for 4 years, and now I've been doing this for almost 10. It's hard to believe, almost 10 years doing this. And so for me, there have been times that I would have sold the company for just some Subway coupons, right? There are times I'm like, you can have it, man. Just take care of everybody, right? But then there are times I'm like, man, I wouldn't sell this for $1 trillion. I enjoy it so much. So I think what's next for me is I want to continue to get the business to a place where I'm an investor in the company, not have to operate it. Like I'm involved in daily operations. My team relies on me for a lot of things, and I'm trying to get myself to a place where my team can operate without me, and I can continue to build the asset, make it more valuable, cast the vision, communicate that vision, which is ideally the 3 things that an entrepreneur should do. The architect of the business should create the vision, should create and cast the vision, communicate that, and then build the asset. That's what he or she should be doing. He shouldn't be answering emails and making sales presentations. That's what a CEO should do. And I'm not there yet, and I'm working towards that. So that's my next step. Then the other thing that I'm doing kind of on the side, because it scratches the itch of my need to teach, because God created me my unique abilities to teach people, is I do a lot of sales training and coaching, and a lot on social media. I do a lot of sales tip videos. And so I'm writing a book right now that I'm hoping it'll come out next year if I can just get it finished, called Why People Buy, unpacking the 4 reasons why anybody buys anything. And I'm trying to get that content put out there. So I'm doing sales seminars and workshops on that content. And I think long term, when my business is at a place where I'm the investor, not the operator, is that I'll be doing a lot of consulting and coaching and getting entrepreneurs from startup inception to a place of success within 3 years. I think that's my goal. If I can get them that first 3 years, because those are the most critical, right? Most businesses don't last. So if I can get them through that first 3 is kind of a lucky number for me. So if I can get them through that first 3, I think they can make it.
Well, good stuff, my friend. I mean, I think it's awesome. Everything that you've shared with us has been very enlightening. You are actually teaching a sales workshop on why people buy on December 12th from 1 to 4 at Vol State University. So if you would like to attend this, we urge all of our listeners to plug into that workshop, and the cost of it is
it's only $60.
$60
for 3 hours. It's
$60 for 3 hours from 1 to 4 on December 12th. So we definitely urge you all to come out to that if you can, and join Jason and have him share some more ideas. Man, thank you so much for being here today, and we wish you the best of luck. And also thank you to all our listeners out there that have joined the show today. We hope you got a lot out of all that we've had to offer and share. We hope you're inspired and you find some happiness and bring joy to whatever you want to do next in your life. Let us know how awesome we are as well by leaving us a 5-star review on whatever platform of podcast that you're listening to, and we'll keep the content coming your way. Like us on Facebook at Go Big or Go Home with James Harper. And our podcast, as I just said, can be seen on all the platforms out there. But if you don't have it on one of those platforms, you can go to our website at www.nashvillemortgagelenders.com. So do what your mama said, go big or go home, and thanks for joining us today.
Primary Residential Mortgage, Inc., NMLS 3094. James Harper, Division Manager, Primary Residential Mortgage, Hendersonville, Tennessee. NMLS 71317-131 Saundersville Road, Suite 140, Hendersonville, Tennessee 37075. Primary Residential Mortgage, Inc. is an equal housing lender. Some products and services may not be available in all states. Credit and collateral are subject to approval. Terms and conditions apply. Programs, rates, terms, and conditions are subject to change and are subject to borrower's qualification, borrower's qualification, borrower's qualification, borrower's qualification, borrower's qualification.